Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on wherever you are in the world. Very, very warm welcome from me, David Roth, from WPP, live from our 11/11 Global Shopping Festival studios here in London, which we're doing in conjunction with both BAV and Alibaba. Well, if you thought that yesterday was crammed with insights, you've seen nothing yet. Today is wall-to-wall both interest, but most importantly, insights that will help you understand 11/11 better, and also the implications that that can have, not just for doing business within China, but also for your businesses right across the world. Again, we are seeing a number of new innovations which we believe will turn into new trends that will be adapted right across the world. So stay tuned for as much broadcasting that you have time for today. So let me talk a little bit about what we've got in store for you today. Well, David Lloyd on Monday spoke a little bit about the Alibaba overall ecosystem. And today we're going to delve slightly deeper into two aspects of that ecosystem, both Alipay and Ali Cloud, to understand how it works, the interrelationships between elements of the ecosystem, and again, how you can use that to your advantage. We will also be looking at what has historically, and probably still is now, referred to as the lower tier cities in China. And don't be put off by that name, because the lower tier cities now in China, first of all, have always been vast. But they are well catching up in terms of the disposable income that consumers in those cities now have. And they're becoming real growth engines for both brands and for consumers to discover new and innovative products and to use those as well. And I think what we've been seeing this year for 11/11 is that those lower tier cities will be a lot of the driver of the growth that we are already seeing. And I think you will get a good perspective on why that is the case. Now, travel's been pretty difficult, and certainly travel to China has been almost impossible. So we're bringing China to you visually, so don't miss movie time that starts at 12:30 when we've got a spectacular journey across all aspects of China, rural China, young China, technological China. So please stay tuned if that coincides with your lunchtime. Get out your sandwiches and enjoy watching. And of course, this afternoon, don't miss the session we have on live stream. I absolutely guarantee to you it will be both illuminating and fun as well. You'll get to understand the multi aspects of live streaming and why this year at 11/11 it's been more powerful than it's ever been in the past. And then our keynote interview of the day, which will be with Chris Tung, who is the global CMO of Alibaba Group. So an action-packed day, but probably the best bit of any day is to go live to China, which we're doing every single morning, to get a feel and a perspective of exactly what's been going on in China through the 11/11 period. And I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to introduce and to welcome Rupert McPetrie, who is the CEO of Mediacom in China. Rupert, a very warm welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. From one command center for 11/11 in London to your command center for Mediacom in Shanghai.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be here. As you say, we're live coming from the Mediacom 11/11 War Room. So you can probably see behind me some screens. I've hashed them out. Normally this would be full of Tmall data, streaming live, so the teams here can collaborate, can work together, and really try and drive the business forward. We have these rooms serving our clients here in the WPP campus in Shanghai. So yeah, really exciting time.
Well, you can apologise to your colleagues that we've kick them out for 45 minutes. I'm sure they'll all be back beavering away, and maybe they can get a well-earned break. Rupert, how many 11.11s have you been through?
So this is now my seventh 11.11.
I'm surprised you've still got hair.
Less and less, David, to be honest. But it's days like these, it's events like this, are part of the reason that China's such an exciting place to be in our business and obviously for our customers. Really transformational times. Now,
clearly, 11.11 is important for you as a business, and it's very important for all of you, for your clients. And I'd imagine for most of those clients, 11.11 is probably the biggest sales period across the year. Over those years that you've been involved, how would you typify the changes that you've seen over 11.11? I mean, clearly we looked at numbers, so the numbers are growing, but underneath that, what are the fundamental drivers?
Well, look, I mean, the numbers are staggering, and they remain staggering to me even after seven versions of this. And I'll dwell on the numbers a little bit, if I may, because we talked earlier. You mentioned in your introduction about the importance of live streaming, for example, and we looked at some of the the opening days, live streaming, the impact of some of these key live streamers like Austin Lee and Via. These presenters, these live streamers, they're on air for 10 hours a day, but the sales that they're generating is staggering. So if you look at something like Austin Lee on day one, over 10 billion RMB of GMV, of sales.
Do you want to say that again slightly slower, Rupert? How much is that?
Yeah, sure. So one live streamer covering multiple brands over 12 hours on the opening day, 10.7 billion RMB of sales. And on the same day, another key live streamer, Via, achieved over 8 billion RMB of sales. So although after 7 years I'm quite used to some big numbers, the numbers are still quite staggering.
I suppose, Rupert, the other, staggering thing, those numbers are extraordinary, is 3 years ago, it was pretty much zero.
Yeah, exactly. So to come back to the question of what's changed, I think, there's a number of things that have evolved, in the market. So this is 13th 11.11 in China, my 7th. And, progressively you've seen 11.11 become, not just single platform, but multi-platform. It's become a real shopping event that starts, 2 weeks ago in the pre-sale or the warm-up and runs. And we see many different sort of approaches to the phasing. Advertisers, businesses tend to start earlier and earlier to drive that pre-sale, to drive the awareness, to drive the seeding and the demand. And then you see different techniques. Live streaming obviously became very hot here in China last year at the start of the pandemic as a reaction to that. But now it's kind of institutionalized as a way to really provoke that demand.
So Rupert, is live? Would you say live streaming now in China is just? Not just. Clearly, it's very large, but is now going to be an established alternative sales channel, which you'll have to plan within your media mix for across the year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was really incubated last year through necessity, honestly speaking. But even last year, we saw, a number of different categories jump into live streaming, categories you wouldn't, traditionally expect. You'd see big automotive launches live streamed. You'd then see shopping festivals fueled by live streaming, particular products, particular live streamers. There's a statistic, not verified, David, not verified, that potentially when you look at client budgets being invested in this year's 11.11, that some customers are investing somewhere between 5, 6, maybe as high as 8% of their overall spend around 11.11 into live streaming events. It's that important to get started.
Now, on that sort of balance, again, have you seen over the years a very different type of media laydown mix over those years as the technology's changed, the channels have developed in terms of what the possibilities are?
Sure. Look, I think the trend we've seen is quite a mix of evolution in terms of activation in the platforms. It's a multi-platform play, but in each platform, be it JD or Tmall, there are optimizations, there are techniques that we're using to drive the best value. But then there's the question of how to drive traffic to the site. And I think this is where we're now looking with customers at a much more holistic one view of using, outside media to drive traffic inside and then optimizing inside. And that, of course, means that our journey is also quite extended because the planning cycles for Double 11 start earlier and earlier and earlier, respecting the fact that, sometimes some of the brand activation we'll be doing quite early will still be impacting in terms of driving traffic to platform. Some quite a lot of changes then.
So how early in the cycle then do your team start to both engage with Alibaba and the platforms, but also your clients in order to literally start the planning process? Because this is so big and so large, you can't sort of suddenly wake up in end of July, beginning of August, and start thinking about what are you going to do for 11/11.
Sure. So I think a couple of things on that, David. The first point is it's such an integral part of clients' businesses here that it forms part of our natural annual planning cycle. So when we're looking at the phasing of budgets and investments across the year, the channel deployment and so on, it will be informed right at the start of the planning cycle for clients. Of course, we then fine-tune and get into the specific tactics and operational side as we go through the year. But it does start very early. I think the second point is, although we're here talking about Double 11, it's obviously not the only shopping festival in China, and there are many shopping festivals.
We had a session right there at the beginning on Monday morning on just the whole sort of shopping festival phenomena, the psychology behind it, and also the number of shopping festivals that there are in China, which clearly, from a media perspective, as you're saying, you need to manage through.
Yeah, exactly so. So, obviously it is an iterative journey, particularly when we're looking at, potentially new formats, new ways to activate. So, we're always taking the lessons, say, from the June 618 festival and seeing how those lessons can then be applied to make an operational plan for Double 11. Ironically, I was at a client meeting last week where we were going through a lot of the operational details for the current Double 11, but also with an eye on Double 12. Yes. Which obviously is coming up quite quickly. So it's it's an endless iteration and evolution.
Now, I suppose one of the intriguing things about Double 11, from my perspective, is it sort of started very much being a place where it was all about discounting, and it's developed significantly from there. All those 13, 14 years ago. From a sort of a media perspective, brand building perspective, is Double 11 now a good time for brand building activity?
Sure. I think, the short answer is yes. I think in the China ecosystem, given the amount of time that consumers spend in the shopping platforms, where they do, a lot of search behavior, normal search behavior sits in the platforms in China. So as a consumer, your time in these platforms is quite high. So there has been for some time, a clear brand building effect of insight media. And of course, when we're working with customers here, we're trying to find that balance of what's the brand building effect of, platform insight media, but also what's the contribution that pure brand building activity outside of the platforms drives traffic, to the point I made earlier. So you're trying to find that balance. I think when we look at it this year, I think that there's a couple of things. I think absolutely it's a critical part of client brand building, again, because of the time consumers are spending on platform, particularly Gen Z, the younger generations. When they're scanning for products, when they're learning about products, when they're perhaps trying to understand a narrative, a story behind a product, they're quite likely to spend a lot of time on the platforms doing that. and they won't be getting their information about brands from the more legacy historic ways to get that. Having said that, there's certainly a lot of activity on the platforms, even in the quite early days, with substantial price offers, discounting. Sure. I think all our customers are looking at where that balance is in terms of driving the traffic and the volume from a price point perspective.
And presumably that will change from category to category as well, that type of balance and where the equilibrium point is.
Absolutely. And so when we're analysing the data with our customers, we'll be looking at the traffic, we're looking at conversion, we'll be looking at the average transaction value, the basket, the products in that basket. And so, we'll be constantly evolving the plan. And if there's something a signal that we see, let's say the traffic is not quite where we need it to be, and maybe that's the time to put in, a hero product with an attractive discount, the traffic comes, and then their insight and so on. So this is why we have the war rooms, right? So we're always in the data, trying to get the learnings and the best practice.
I mean that to me is a really critical point, and maybe distinguishes 11/11 from many other promotional periods around the world, be they sort of Black Friday or Thanksgiving or whatever it might be. The level of data that you now have available to you and the teams on, maybe it is a real-time minute-by-minute basis, where you can look at the data in relation to where the traffic is, where it's going, the sales that are being made, and making holistic decisions about equilibriums of price, promotion, driving people to various different places. Is it a bit like a trading desk now at a Wall Street firm? How all this is working?
Wow, I've not quite thought of it in that lens. But look, we as I said before we turned on, the screens behind me were wall-to-wall data, via an API from Taobao, showing real-time updates on a client's business in terms of different categories and business lines they have against their competitors. So we are constantly adjusting, reacting, bringing in new tactics. A lot of the steps we take are from a playbook, but equally, things happen that are outside the playbook rules, in which case, again, the sort of war room environment works quite well. We have the data, we have the specialists, we're pulling, we have a war room here, and we'll also usually designate a room on site at the client office as well. And often we'll have two teams, one with the client office, one here in the WPP campus. So, it becomes a very seamless sort of discussion and handover, and allows us to make, very, very rapid decisions.
Well, we've heard over the course of the last couple of days how 11/11 is really a combination of teamwork to make 11/11 really work, which I suppose poses the interesting question for you from a management perspective and from an organisation perspective. How do you organise your teams? And clearly, your teams have to be fully integrated with the data feeds, with clients, the information that they're getting from their various different feeds as well. And in the context of that, what can we all learn about how to do that in a way that has the ability to be able to be phenomenally sort of on the ball, reactive, and help drive the relationships between clients and agencies?
I think there's a couple of clear things on that, and some of them I guess stand out clearly. Obviously, the preparation is important. You identify the timing, the process, and you get prepared in terms of making sure you've got all the technology in place, all the feeds are there, the APIs are in place. You make sure your staff are not on holiday right now. And
yes, all leave cancelled. Yeah.
All leave is cancelled, exactly. And you're having a similar discussion with your client partners, just to make sure all the right people are available at the right time, that their technology is in place, that we've co-identified workspaces that will be dedicated to the event, will be the war room. I think furthermore, it's about, in that planning cycle, it's about making sure that, to the point I said earlier, it's about sort of seamless handovers and seamless ways of working. I guess the best buzzword I could use for it is it's all about agile work. We won't have standing armies doing 4-hour set piece meetings. We'll look at data, we'll get in a quick huddle, make a decision, see what happens, take the analysis, take the insight, move into another huddle. So it's very short, sharp, iterative, very, very flat from a hierarchy point of view. It's just about getting the job done.
And do you think, in a funny sort of way, 11/11 across both, your business and clients' business has been a catalyst for creating high-performance cross-functional teams?
Yeah, absolutely, David. I mean, it's probably, a time in the year where, we have the most intensity just because of the cadence of operations and the business significance. But it's also a time where, you do genuinely stand shoulder to shoulder, and typically you'd have a shared KPI. So, you're all working in the same direction. And I think, it's hard work. It's not a holiday. But the type of collaboration that you do get with that aligned direction, agile way of working, real-time way of looking at the data, there's not really a lag effect here. There's no lag. It's just, straight in. I think that, creates a really positive cultural way of working with customers as well.
Now, you sit in a unique sort of position across many of your clients in very different sectors. What are your expectations for this year's 11/11? I mean, expectations for maybe some of the things you've seen over the last few days.
Sure. I mean, I think it's, so far it's been interesting. We've seen an early start. We actually started 4 hours earlier this year.
Yeah. So normally at midnight it starts, but the clock started at 8 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. So extra 4 hours of shopping, obviously a bit more convenient for some people. We've seen this focus on live streaming. We've seen some interesting innovation from the Ali side. Just trying to do different things for the customers. The Tmall VIP membership program, for example, is sort of expanding a bit to pull in customers from other platforms. There's shopping cart sharing functions, so if you see something from your celebrity, you can easily pop that into your cart. Interesting theme. I think you may have touched on it earlier, David, around sort of almost a social responsibility aspect coming in now. A lot of focus on, recycled packaging in terms of the fulfillment and that sort of thing. So there are some really interesting themes, I think, in terms of, how it's going so far. I think, as ever, we touched on earlier, the numbers are staggering. I think, there's obviously significant upticks already compared to a year ago, but also the expectation is high. I think, again, the importance of 11/11 to clients' businesses is very, very high. So I think most customers, most businesses here will have quite high targets for 11/11. Let's see how we work out on that. We're sitting here with some impressive statistics so far. There's still obviously a few days to go, and as ever, we'll be judging that balance between traffic and volume and price point, and therefore the overall sales as we go through. It's from the category side, we've seen a lot more activity in the luxury segment. We've obviously got all the traditional players from packaged goods, so on and so forth, but some interesting plays.
That's interesting. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about that, because in a sense, the luxury, well, not innocent, the luxury players were very reluctant to get involved in promotional events like 11/11, but it seems like the platforms have adapted the luxury environments that they have in order to play better to the brand importance that the luxury players have, and also from a luxury perspective, it's not about the discount. So perhaps you could just explain a little bit about
Sure.
how that works, do you think, from your perspective?
I think for me, the big change was last year. As you say, perhaps, the luxury category hasn't been historically a first mover in this space, but, for the reasons of price, but also, the concerns around brand stories and the wonderful stories told over time that so many of the luxury businesses have. But clearly last year accelerated some changes. So, you see not just, the luxury pavilion, but you see, some specific, mini programs in other ecosystems popping up. You see some, China specific, jewelry, watches, etc., developed at certain price points that make it a bit more accessible on platforms. So it's nothing like the scale of the more traditional packaged goods and so on, and apparel and electronics, etc. But it's growing. I think that's quite interesting. And it's, from a business point of view, it's obviously quite an interesting dynamic when, if you look at, the penetration of these shopping apps around, Chinese consumers, over 1 billion consumers have these apps on their phones. It's, 92% penetration of adults on these apps on their phones. So it's interesting when new categories start to explore, not just the reinforcing of the more familiar categories. And look, we're talking about the more traditional players in the commerce space. I think the business so far has been quite healthy. The early days signs look, the trend is quite positive for some. And it's all ahead of us, I guess, with a few days.
Indeed, it is. It sounds strange to say this over an 11-day period, but this is a marathon and not a sprint. But it feels like every day is a marathon in its own right. Which categories, Rupert, do you think are going to be the star performers? We're hearing that health and wellness as a category is something that's growing fast, and also maybe a little bit of observation. You touched on it from a structural perspective in terms of the green agenda and the responsible agenda. But how is that also being played out from a brand and a product perspective, as well as a platform perspective?
Look, I think so far the indications are that the beauty category is going to do quite well. Luxury, emerging. For me, I think one of the most interesting overlays this year is how Chinese local brands are performing very, very well. It's always been, in the last couple of years, fierce competition between some of the established multinational businesses here and some of the emerging local businesses. So when you look at, beauty, you look at packaged goods, you look at apparel, some of the domestic businesses are doing incredibly well. And my sense is that will be one of the themes for this year's Double 11 across the different platforms, that, Chinese businesses are potentially having a stronger year.
Now, there'll be many people watching who haven't yet taken the plunge to get involved with 11/11 from a cross-border perspective. What advice would you give to brands who are watching all of this and thinking, maybe 2022 is the year that I start to play? I can't ignore it for any longer.
Well, number one, they should give me a call immediately.
Excellent. Good.
Number two, I think, look, there are many lessons around, brands coming into China and what it takes to succeed. some of them urban myths, some of them based in, some real hard facts. I think the advice, as always, would be to do the research. I guess I'm stating the obvious, but the ecosystem remains very, very unique and specific. I guess some of the theoretical rules of engagement are common, but to land a business successfully in China, you really need to not just look at and read about the local reality. You need to feel it. You need to understand the ecosystem. You need to particularly understand the customer. But again, the trend at the moment, is for quite rapid change of sentiments from the consumer. Be it on a green agenda, be it on a local, China pride type agenda. So there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. And I think the other lesson is you have to be prepared to commit, because it may take some time to really establish the business and establish that success story.
Now, I can't let you completely get away without mentioning the metaverse word, which I think is now compulsory in any conversation at the moment. But in all seriousness, we've seen some interesting developments on the Alibaba platform this year, which I suppose could loosely be categorized as activity within the metaverse. What's your perspective of metaverse activity, and I suppose what we're seeing more and more in China is the sort of the gamification of the shopping experience on these platforms?
David, firstly, I'm so glad you've asked me that question, because in my notes I was sort of making before this call, top of the list was metaverse. So thank you. I'm sorry
it took me so long to get there.
Look, I think it's a trend here, for sure. Given the penetration of technology, the advanced technologies that exist here in China, it's a reality here. And you mentioned already some of the developments on the platforms. We were looking some time ago at, in the Taobao app, in the Taobao Life area, you can create your own avatar, take pictures, pull in friends to take pictures. You can, try on
you can dress your avatars in the clothes you're interested in buying. I mean, it's the future is there to be seen, isn't it, in China?
Absolutely. So, I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder, but I believe the metaverse is already live here, for sure.
And do you think, as a media channel, things happening within the metaverse, it's going to be, I don't know how one would characterize it in terms of a buy, but can you imagine that more media money will be bought within the metaverse in one form or another? And we should look at China first to see how that's developing.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I think, when we look at the overall ecosystem and trends here, that idea of, the importance of the understanding the merging of content and, virtual reality, for want of a better phrase, of content and channel is absolutely critical. Of course, there's lots of operational questions around, how you go to market in that case, how you'd evaluate and monitor. But absolutely, I think, as always, we try and look at it not just from the business lens, but from the customer, from the consumer lens. And the technology is there, it's being used. So, I do consider it reality. And, the discussions we have with our customers is certainly more and more in that direction of moving into, that holistic view, content, platform, channel, and try and understand how we can best drive growth there. So, yeah, absolutely.
And do you see a sort of a catalytic sort of either bit of technology or application or development of current applications that will sort of step change consumers' adoption?
I think right now, as ever, it's a developmental arms race. And, I think we're blessed here because we have, a couple of platforms, a number of platforms with quite deep pockets and R&D funds available. I think, the landscape is such, it's not, one player. There's a lot of competition there across the ecosystem, which is great. All trying to unlock, those new ways to engage with consumers and give, us and our advertisers that platform. At the same time, you've got businesses looking at creating, their own ecosystems as well. So, one of the other things we're seeing here is, sort of own channel development from clients as well. So the ecosystem becomes more competitive, more opportunity for customers to engage. And that developmental arms race is just running and running.
I mean, one of the initial things that I've heard from a couple of metaverse trials in the retail space in China is to your point, which is the ability to be able to move somebody from somebody else's channel into your own channel, into your own environment, and to keep them there for some considerable time as they engage, with both sort of products and stories of those products and being able to purchase at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the first things we've seen, this year, and it's one of the reasons why I think, the whole live streaming aspect has become so important, because that is a pull. It's a pull into the ecosystem. And then once the customer's in that ecosystem, then all the product lines, product stories come out and so on. So, yeah, absolutely critical.
Now, I know myself as a marketer and a retailer, I can't help but get enthused and involved in promotions that are going on. I can't help myself, click the button. Rupert, what have you put in your basket for buying? Maybe you already bought it, maybe you're about to buy it. What's in your 11/11 shopping basket?
Well, I can be very transparent about this. I've recently just returned to China, and I had the quarantine period. Where obviously I didn't do a huge amount of sport. So my number one priority, number one on my shopping list, is to get some new sports gear, some new running trainers, so I can get out and try and catch up on lost time.
Well, we won't keep you any longer to try the trainers on and go for a run, but probably more realistically for everybody in the war room to re-enter it. And for everybody to get back planning on today's activity for all of your clients. But Rupert, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a pleasure. It's a shame that I haven't been able to see you personally, but hopefully next year we'll be able to get to China. But Rupert McPetrie, the CEO of Mediacom in China. It's been a pleasure and delight. Thank you very much for sharing those insights with us.
Thanks, David, and good luck for the rest of the day.
Thanks very much indeed. And we'll be back in 15 minutes for our look and our insight into third, fourth and fifth tier China and how important that is. Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks very much. Bye.